Hey, this is Gab Goldenberg of conversionrateoptimization.co. I'm here with Lincoln Murphy of 16 Ventures, one of the world's most followed SaaS consultants, CRO consultants. The guy can help you with your onboarding, with your free trial conversion rates, with many more things, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Lincoln, thanks for joining me.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So before we started this interview, I asked if you could share some things you'd like to talk about as well as some case studies. And I had to say there were some really remarkable things here. In particular, something that struck me because, I come from the world of search marketing, and I recently saw a case study where this guy in his very first year running a PPC agency took it from 0 to 2.5 million gross revenue in a year. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And so in his case study, the guy was talking about, what was this secret to his success? Something that'll be very familiar to all your SaaS followers, customer success, right? And he was saying in those first 2 weeks, even the first week, he wanted to get them big wins. And then that makes a happy customer, word of mouth. And, it's a virtuous cycle from there. So you've got some very interesting case studies here about, going, for example, from 43 days to conversion to 3 days to conversion on a 30-day free trial. So that must do fantastic things for cash flow and for acquisition. So that's for Vision 6, if I understand right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you
It's an
tell us?
email marketing company in Australia.
Okay, so they're an email marketing company in Australia. And how did you help them? What was the research? What can you tell us about that experiment?
Yeah. So this is a company that I've worked with over the years, probably going on about 5 years, just off and on.
Very nice.
And this is one of those companies that really email marketing is one of those categories, product categories that a lot of companies are fairly similar. They kind of all copy each other. And I had the opportunity one year to work with 7 or 8 email marketing companies, and it was my first real opportunity to work with several companies in the same product
Niche.
category, right?
Right.
So I work with a lot of SaaS companies, but these were the first to, I had some visibility into lots of different companies around the same time, and I really learned a few things from that experience, and I saw that first of all, a lot of the movement in the email marketing world in terms of customers isn't net new customers coming in and doing email marketing for the first time. It's really customers moving from one vendor to another because
Interesting.
that first vendor didn't solve their problem or didn't help them,
Oh, wow.
and so they move on to another one. That vendor doesn't do what they want. They move on to the other one. But the problem is those vendors are all pretty much, I mean,
Identical.
they're pretty similar, yeah.
Right.
So what that means is that something else is going on there, and this is when I started to really understand this idea of a success gap. And so you talked about customer success. Well, customer success is when your customers achieve their desired outcome through their interactions with your company.
Exactly.
The problem is there are some products and some companies that even if you use my product to the fullest, you do everything that the product does, and you come out the other end, and I look at it from the vendor standpoint and I say, you've done everything. No matter what, you may still not achieve your desired outcome.
Interesting.
That's a problem, right? So there's a
Right.
gap between the functional use of your product
Right.
and the end result. And
You're
email
measuring
marketing,
events, but the success is not just, oh, they used every feature, therefore they're happy.
exactly. So why does that happen? Well, because you can go through, build a list, send an email, have it opened and maybe even consumed in some way, clicks or whatever. But if you were trying to get more people to buy a product or come to an event and they didn't,
Right.
um, even though you functionally use the product, you still didn't achieve that desired outcome.
Sure.
So what I learned was we need to do a lot to bridge that success gap. So going back to this example of Vision 6, what we said was, okay, we know that customers are coming in from, a lot of customers are coming in from other products. And so we actually did some analysis, and we actually talked to customers, which is, this crazy idea, talk to prospects, but also talk to your existing customers and find out where they come from.
Right.
And then we can start to really understand, okay, maybe they're all coming from a certain a certain competitor, or maybe they're coming from all over, but at least we know that they are coming from, they have experience, right?
Right.
So
They're
we kind
not
of,
brand newbies.
right. So we went back and looked at the onboarding flow. The onboarding flow was very catered towards newbies, and very, just there were a lot of barriers to somebody that maybe already knew what they were wanting to achieve.
Uh,
And yes, so you said 43 days, 3 days, and this will maybe be clear on that. They have a 30-day free trial. Originally, it was taking on average 43 days for a customer or for a prospect to convert to a customer on
wow.
a 30 free trial. So what does that mean? It means the trial would expire, and then they would start asking for the sale rather than doing it during the trial. And on average, it would on about day 43, and sometimes, I mean, we looked at everything. Some people converted early, obviously, so this is an
Right.
average. Some took forever,
Right.
and so we were like, okay, that's obviously not good. So we went back and sort of refactored the entire sign up process to say, well, what is somebody who already knows what they're, already has experience, already knows what their desired outcome is, which is, they need to be able to send these emails and have the action that they want to occur take place. How can we get them there quicker? So we really just kind of redesigned everything. Did a thing where you could go in and this is based on, again, off of talking to customers about what they wanted to achieve quickly. And
Right.
what were the first things that you need to do here? And I think, just to kind of take a little bit of a sidebar on that, I think sometimes we probably want to give our customers too much. So there's a concept in customer success called time to first value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's getting our customer to a point where they've achieved value quickly, or they've achieved value for the first time, or
Right.
for the first time they see the true value potential in your product outside of your sales and marketing.
Right. They've been the use case.
Right. So we know that time to first value is an important metric. But sometimes we as the vendor think of what value is in the wrong way. We think of it as this really big, maybe the big concept where they use, like we talked about, with complete functional use of the product. They've done everything. But if we understand our customers, we go back and we talk to them and we understand their use case, we know where they're coming from, we might realize that time to first value could be much shorter if we just changed our definition of what value is based on what they think.
Right.
So often we're focused on what we think value is. And so with Vision 6, we were able to say, no, they need to just be able to upload their list and send an email. In fact,
Right.
they just need to be able to create an email, see how easy it is to do that within our tool. And then they need to upload their list, and then they can be off to the races. And so
Interesting.
we kind of flipped that around. We actually took a lot of the barriers to entry down so they could just start writing an email without
Got
even
it.
logging in, without even creating an account.
Oh, that's clever. Eliminating all the
Yeah,
friction. That's so smart.
it was
I like
but
that.
it was very much based on, we had some assumptions, right? You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But then we went and we validated those assumptions before we ever even built a screen,
Okay.
before we ever even designed a wireframe or a mock-up. And then you start going down this path of, well, if this is what the customer's actual desired outcome is, and this is what we think, and based on our conversations with them, that this is when they would achieve first value and they would really see the power of our product versus the competition, and we can do things to bridge those success gaps in that process, even help them write a better email, point out things that, that subject line, a
It's
lot of
not going
times
to get opened.
yeah, a lot of times it's, well, that's a spammy subject line, but we don't go the other direction and say, let's help you write that. I mean, it's too long. It's not going to display correctly on a mobile device,
Right.
whatever. All of those things go into helping the customer achieve that first value.
Sure.
And so doing all of that, we took it down from 43 days on average on a 30-day free trial, kept the 30-day free trial, but got people to convert on day 3.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Well, we get them the value quickly.
Right.
And once they've achieved value, so once they've sent the emails and they started getting a good response,
Sure. They're happy to pay for it.
then we ask for the sale.
Right.
And
So
that's what being logical about when we ask for the sale is huge.
Exactly. You talked about that in a recent article you shared with me about upsells. I'd love to get to that. I want to talk about something you just brought up, and I think it's so critical in SaaS, in conversion rate optimization, in basically every niche. And as somebody who's only really learnt it and appreciated it in the past few years, partly my own fault, I think partly because until Lean came about, people were just clutching at straws and nobody really knew how to do it properly. You talk about interviewing customers and speaking to them. So I would love to hear about your process. What are some of the questions you ask? How do you even, reach out to people? Why do you think that people aren't doing more of this? Is the fear of rejection? I'm going to ask 100 people and like 5 of them are going to say yes. I'm going to waste, all that time that I reached out to the other 95 people and, 5 interviews. Is that really valuable? What are your thoughts on the customer research problems like that? Why don't people do more of it? And what are the questions that you ask? How do you get to those key insights?
So, why don't people do it? I mean, I think it runs the gamut from not, and I don't know if people will readily admit this, but I mean, I think some people just don't want to. They're scared to talk to people. Scared to talk to customers.
Yeah.
But I think it also in that even in there, there's a gradient. Some people just don't want to they don't want to talk to other people. Some don't want to talk to those that could potentially turn them down. They kind of fear that rejection, or they don't want to get feedback because it could be that they don't want to get the feedback because they don't want to feel bad about what they've built.
Right.
Or they might think that the people giving them the feedback, what right do they have to give them the feedback? I mean, I've run into people that fit all those different categories.
Interesting.
But I think at the end of the day, if you want to have a successful business, you need to get out of your own way, kind of put your ego to the side, and know that you're either building this for you or you're building it for your customers.
Right.
And there's a lot more, hopefully, customers out there than there are of you. And so we need to make sure that you're building something that people will actually want to buy and use and be successful with and tell their friends about and that kind of thing. So that's hard when you're a founder, especially if you're a technical founder or you're a designer and you've built this yourself.
Yeah.
And to go out and say to people who don't have the same qualifications as you, to say what
do you think? Give me feedback.
Right. And to get that and know that it's not necessarily all going to be positive sounding.
Yeah, right? That's scary.
But feedback is positive if you are taking it the right way. So I think just kind of get out of your own way and know that you have to build something that people want.
Right.
But let me be clear on that, because I think this is where people can also get in trouble. Building something that people want or need is different than building what people ask for or what people say they need or want.
Right.
And this is going to your question about how do you ask the right questions. And so we've all heard that story about Henry Ford and asking people what they wanted and they'd tell you a faster horse.
Right.
Or how Steve Jobs never asked anybody what they wanted and he just built something and it changed the world.
Right.
Okay. I think there's some nuances in there probably, right?
Yeah. If I can share one, Steve Jobs, this is something I don't know how many people know, but before he came back to Apple, he launched a company with a lot of his own personal money. They made the first go around with Apple. I forget what the company was called, but he got, his brightest engineers and designers and all that, and I forget what the product was, but it was a total flop. The Next, right. Yep. And, so the iPhone was more of a success. There's, maybe some insights to be gleaned into. Maybe they were scratching their own itch or they got some other form of validation. But, even a guy like Steve Jobs failed horribly with that. So anyway, go on.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for saying that, because I think we sometimes put people up on pedestals and we don't really, for that one thing they did, we don't take into consideration that they probably had some flops. Next, by the way, actually ended up being part of the core of OS 10. So
no kidding.
It was on, yeah.
Cool.
But the thing is, yeah, and we have to understand that even the best, even the people that are the most successful have had failures, and they tried things and didn't work. But I think where I'm going with Steve Jobs there is that he maybe didn't ask people, do you want an iPhone, right? Do you want this? Because we wouldn't have wanted that.
Yeah.
Maybe we would have wanted a smaller phone,
Right.
that just made better calls or whatever.
Right.
But what he did do was understood the customers, understood the market better than we understood ourselves, and he did that through, from what I understand, through a lot of direct research, through secondary research, through talking to people, and just really thinking about what could we want. So I mean, he was he was a little bit visionary, and maybe you don't have to be that way in terms of you're building a B2B product. In the project management space, you don't have to sit around and meditate on what the big thing is 5 years from now. But you should sit around and think about based on my understanding of our customers, what would their desired outcome be? Or what is their desired outcome?
Yeah.
What do they want to achieve, and how do they want to achieve it? And if you can start to understand that and think about things from the customer standpoint, then you're going to be able to, now when you go out and ask questions, you're going to ask questions that aren't about features and functionality and interfaces and whatever it is that's project based or focused on you as the vendor. And you're going to go out and ask questions that are about what the customers are trying to achieve. Now, I don't suggest you go out and say, what's your desired outcome? That nobody knows what that means.
Right.
But if you ask about what's the job to be done that you're trying to achieve.
Sure, the job to be done framework.
Now I get a little bit, I get a little worried about that framework and frameworks in general. I mean, I say framework all the time. I build frameworks. I fear sometimes that they get a little bit almost religious.
Yeah.
and you can't move outside of them. So I kind of go all over the place with frameworks. But
That's great.
yeah, I mean, there's a job to be done. There's a thing that you're trying to achieve, right? That your customer has to achieve. The thing is, though, they can achieve that probably in lots of different ways, right? They can buy your product, they can buy a competitive product, they can use an open source product, they could roll their own,
right?
They could outsource it, they could hire somebody, whatever.
Right.
There's as part of the desired outcome, there's an appropriate experience. And appropriate experience is what basically says, I have that job to be done. This is how I need to get it done. This is the experience that I want to have when I do that thing. That's ultimately going to be the most important aspect. The job to be done, the thing that has to be done, the required outcome of your customer, that's what gets you in the game. If you don't meet that, right? If you can't do that, then it's a non-starter.
Right.
But that thing is what you have to accomplish.
Focus on.
But that again, that can be done lots of different ways.
Right.
They're going to come to you. They're going to buy from you because you help them achieve that in the way that they want to achieve it. And that's what sets you apart from your competitors, sets you apart from all those other different ways of doing it.
So can
now,
I ask
when you go ask
sorry.
questions, you have to figure that out. Sorry.
So going back to the Vision 6 case study, and we'll go on to another one in a moment, I'm a bit curious because you brought up something that I think makes a lot of sense, right? Some people might be using email marketing, say, to, get people registered for an event. Some people want to move products, right? E-commerce vendors, let's say. So from what I heard, maybe I misunderstood, the value for Vision 6 vendors was just shifting quickly from their existing or previous email marketing source, right? They exported the list and they just want an easy import and easy, what you see is what you get type visual editor or something like that. So I guess what did you find, if you can share, if you can't, obviously understand was the value for them and yeah, I guess what was the value there for them?
There's the required outcome, right? So the required outcome is that we needed a way to send an email. Every other vendor does that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what gets you in the game. That's in the email marketing space. I need to be able to upload a list and write an email and send it and track the metrics and that's it. Right. How I want to achieve that varies. And something like Aweber is very basic. It gets the job done, but something like Vision 6 has, again, more of a well-designed UI, and it helps me
Right.
achieve this desired or this required outcome in the appropriate way. So yeah, it was getting people to that point quickly. One of the other things that I mentioned was the success gap, helping people achieve that desired outcome, not just giving them the tool, but giving them the resources both in app and externally, giving them content, giving them help in sort of bridging that success gap. Again, I can write an email and I can send it.
Mm.
If I write an email that's garbage
Right.
and has a terrible call to action and a bad subject line and all that other stuff, even though I sent the email, even though I did the thing that your product wanted, and I did the thing
Right.
that I'd been doing, my habits don't change just because I change vendors, right?
Right.
I was
Right.
sending bad emails with those other vendors.
I'm still sending bad emails on
I can
Vision
still
6.
right. So
Right.
how do we help you send better emails, and how do we help you do that quickly?
I get it.
Building some of those things, like I said, into the product,
That's
helping
cool.
you. Yeah. So it's giving you a better experience, that giving you an experience that's appropriate to achieving that overall desired outcome. So
Sure.
that's the point. I think I might have missed that a little bit.
You talked about it. I just missed it. I focused on the wrong thing. So basically, helping them write emails that follow the better principles, the best practices, let's say, of marketing and
Yeah.
persuasion. And okay, cool. So that's clear. So I'm
Have
good.
that ability, by the way. I mean, if you're building a technology product and you're just giving people the functional, what I would say is like a CRUD app, right, where you can just create and
Right.
create it's basically a data based UI, right? That's
Right.
it. Then that is just that's almost a non-starter these days, right? You
Sure.
need to be providing real value to your customers. A lot of times, especially the more niche you go, the more you are less of a software vendor and the more of almost a trusted advisor.
Right. It's
Where you
software
can,
as a service, literally. Like
as a
you're
service, right?
replacing a consultant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about one of the reasons I got really excited about SaaS a long time ago, was I actually came from the supply chain management world. I didn't come from enterprise software. I came from network centric business models. And I saw that one of the huge benefits of SaaS is the network centricity, the fact that we're all using the same system.
Right.
Now, I was a little bit early in that, and the technology and the thinking wasn't there, but I saw the potential, and I've seen that over the last few years really come to fruition. It's not just another software delivery model. It's not just I'm building a piece of software that I can, that people can log into on the web. That's table stakes. That's just the way it is.
Sure.
It's how do we take that and benefit from all of those people using the product? And so if I, as the vendor, can push my knowledge, what I understand about this industry, out to my users, those users and customers benefit from that and feed back into, kind of feed the machine, and then I can roll that back out.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to get much better, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's very different.
There's a virtuous cycle. Yeah, 100%. So I'd like to move on to another case study you shared with me. Just give me a moment to pull it up. Um, there were a few actually about onboarding and basically giving people those better experiences. I think that talks more about what we've been doing now. But just from the after we've purchased perspective, right? If I understand you, when you're talking about onboarding, this is not the free trial. This is onboarding for the people who've already made the first payment.
I think
Or
the
is it a
examples
bit
I
of
gave
both?
you were actually these were free trial
Okay.
onboard. And the thing is, I mean, it's a little bit. If you do a free trial correctly,
Yeah.
if you go about it the right way, that actually is the onboarding process. In
Right.
other words, my goal isn't to get you to evaluate this product. My goal is to get you to use it during the free trial.
Right.
And so I have to think of it as literally part of your onboarding process to becoming a customer. And I think that right there is a disconnect with how most companies still think of free trials, unfortunately.
Right.
They think, I'm going to come in, kick the tires, play around, and then once I've decided that this is good, I'll buy from you, and then I'll start the process. The
Sure.
best companies start that process during the trial. Like when you sign up, I assume you're going to become a customer, right?
Right.
So I'm going to try to
Exactly.
get you to actually use the product. So
Smart.
that's what these are.
So tell us a bit about some of the more original, some of the more creative things you've done with onboarding. What can, other SAS companies learn from your experience?
Sure. So one that I sent you was Project Bubble, which is a project management tool. And one of the things, so the founder of the company reached out and said, look, we're at very, very low even activation rate. So once they signed up for the free trial, validated their email address, went back into the app, almost 100% of the people at that point would drop off.
Wow, that's
So
painful.
right. So we knew it wasn't an email. Like I've seen companies that had their email validation process set up in a way that almost always failed.
Right.
So people weren't even able to validate their email address and therefore weren't able to get into the app.
Right.
All of that was working.
Hmm.
So, we looked at the data, we looked around at what was available, and we really couldn't figure out what was going on. So we had the founding team basically sit down with a live chat, and everybody that came in, they would ask a couple questions. And those so going back to, and I didn't answer the question earlier about how what questions to ask. In this case, we wanted to know number one, what product were they using before they decided to try Project Bubble, and
Right.
two, what's wrong? And I don't remember exactly what the wording was, but basically, what could be improved about this onboarding experience?
Sure.
That was it, and had them do that for a week. Just sit there and talk to customers, talk to new signups, and then we went back and asked people that didn't complete that, or that basically dropped out before they really were even on board during the trial.
Right. Right.
Pull all that information together, and found that pretty much 100% of people were using Microsoft Project.
Okay. Wow.
And
That's amazing.
number two, they couldn't figure out what to do, so they didn't know what to do.
Wow.
Well, it turns out, so Project Bubble is one of those. The founder sort of followed best practices around project management, but Microsoft Project didn't.
So people's workflows were based on the Microsoft
yeah,
funny
so they
way
came
of
in
doing
and they're
it.
like, I have no idea how to get started.
Right.
So knowing that, this was the hack that I think I said in the list that I sent you. Basically said, and I did a little popover that said, if you are coming from Microsoft Project, click here to get started, and then it would take them to the appropriate place to get started. That basically almost tripled conversions in the first 30 days.
That's awesome.
So,
Here's a virtual high five for you.
yeah, thank you. It's just it's one of those little wins that like we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't talked to the customers.
Yeah.
Could have gone back, kept adding features, adding functionality, doing all this stuff that would have been a
Exactly.
big waste of time.
Yeah.
Never would have been found, right? So
Yeah.
talk to your customers. I mean, that's a neat result. I'm super proud of it, but at the same time, it was a little thing.
Sure.
And then once the hack was working and we knew that was really the issue, then you go back and you actually re-engineer the user experience so that it's not so hacky.
Right.
I mean, it was
right.
it looked fun.
It just works naturally. Like they don't need
Right.
to click somewhere special if they're coming from Microsoft Project. It just naturally, that's the main flow or something.
Right. And so to kind of take a step back, the lesson there is most of the time in a free trial, and I would say this, free trials don't convert prospects to customers most of the time because they're not designed to.
Interesting.
You have to design your free trial to convert, and really the biggest problem is free trials are usually not even designed at all. They're
Right.
kind of just, they dump you into the product, and you either suffer from blank page syndrome where you don't know what to do because there's not anything to do,
Right.
or you're overwhelmed with so many options that you just quit, right?
Right.
And so if you can, if it takes 3 or 4 clicks to get the customer to the first place that they need to go,
Right.
just put them there initially.
Smart. Right.
Like, let's think about this from the customer point of view.
Right.
And I always get the pushback I usually get is there's so many things that our product does. We need to we need to be able to show them all these different things. And like the reality is, you're going to show them so many different things that they're not going to do any of it, so they're going to miss all of it.
Right. They're going to be overwhelmed by choice.
Exactly. Go back and think about it from your customer standpoint. Another example that I shared was Kajabi, which is allows you to take your content and basically sell it online. So I can take content that I have and create a course or something, right? Well, they came to me and said, look, we're getting a lot of signups. They're big in the internet marketing space. They have a lot of affiliates and a lot of really big following. They're very trusted advisors in that world. So when they put this out there, a lot of people signed up. But then a lot of people bailed because they couldn't quite get started. And so we started digging through and again talking to customers, looking at the feedback. There's a lot of customers that churned out, left some feedback. We found out, they didn't churn out. They didn't even sign up. They didn't become customers.
Right.
They just stopped before that part of the process. What we found is basically there were three types of prospects. One was a customer or a prospect that had all of their content ready to go. All they needed was a system like Kajabi. They could upload it, get ready, start selling it, ready to go. On the other extreme, there were prospects that didn't even have
a word written.
They didn't have content. They didn't have really even an idea of what they wanted to do. And then in the middle, there were those folks that had some content.
Right.
They weren't quite ready yet.
Right.
Well, the ones that were ready to go, those were the ones that were converting because it was easy.
Sure.
But the other two actually made up the majority. And so what we did is we said, okay, when you come in for the first time, let's get you to self-select, self-identify. Who are you?
Okay, segmentation, personalization.
Exactly. So from the very beginning, right? So I have my stuff. I have my content. I'm ready to go. I just need to upload it and start selling. Click. Okay. Now they're to the point where they can start realizing value quickly. Those that have some, we're going to need to probably help them shape it. We're going to need to give them some help. So we send them through a course and help them pull together what they already have.
Nice.
Manage expectations also. This isn't going to be an overnight thing.
Right.
Right. You're not going to be able to sign up and get started. But and if you follow this over the next 30 days, you'll be good to go.
Right.
And then those folks that weren't even there yet, we said, well, what if we do the smoke test for you, allow you to put up a landing page with an idea.
Right. And see who signs up.
Collecting leads. So there's your 3 entry points, right?
Nice.
And they went about 600% increase on conversions in the first 30 days.
That's such a win.
That's pretty awesome. And
that's fantastic.
It's just one of those things where we just have to think about it again from the customer standpoint and understand that not all customers are the same.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we're not treating them all the same.
Sure.
And so there's various ways to do that sort of segmentation, but that was, I think, kind of a pretty awesome example in kind of some extremes there, right? From people that are absolutely ready to those that weren't at all, and still being able to figure out a way to help all of them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Actually, I was just interviewing these guys, Barry Buckman and Fran Jakubowicz. They're a e-commerce and also lead gen guys here in Israel, and they did a similar thing with localization to personalize, right? So when they spoke to their prospects in City X and said get service A in City X, then conversions just shot up. And similarly for a furniture store in a particular state, when they gave them coupons for in-store traffic, they just drove so many so much foot traffic to the store, the sales went bananas. So 100%.
It's making sure that you really resonate with the prospect, and if you're talking about a free trial, or with the customer. It's the things that apply at the top of the funnel, the CRO world.
Yeah.
What's so interesting to me is I don't think that people actually think this, but it seems to be the way. It's like the catalyst that brought them, the things that we did to really connect with them at the top of the funnel. Like
get forgotten further down. Yeah.
And it doesn't. The catalyst doesn't change. In fact, it theoretically should become stronger. Like you should be playing to that even more.
Yeah.
But there's so much of a disconnect. There has been. I mean, we're starting to get better. I think as an industry, we're still not anywhere near where we need to be. But more and more companies are starting to recognize this and build really the entire marketing funnel and sales process, all the way into the
Wow, that's great.
and treating that part of the product as not just functional onboarding, but really,
Sure.
part of, you're not a customer until you're a customer. And then, by the way, I need to work to keep you a customer,
Yes,
right? Because
exactly.
I can't just rest on my laurels. So.
That's right. So, I'd like to ask you, if somebody wants to learn more about, first of all, your consulting services, right? 16ventures.com for all of you guys watching, listening in. What are some of the different service offerings you can help people out with, right? If we're talking about segmentation, what are some of the different audiences that come to you, and what are some different ways you help them out?
Yeah, I mean, these days I kind of have two full-time jobs. So I have 16 Ventures in my consulting company, and also work with a startup called Gainsight, which is a customer success management product. I spend a lot of time helping companies with customer success, just understanding how to incorporate that into their organization. But really, if you go to 16ventures.com, you can see that I write a lot about pricing and growth hacking and just
Sure.
customer
Free trial optimization, right? Upsells.
You'll start to notice a theme. And the theme really is customer success.
Yeah.
And it's this idea, like I said, it's when customers achieve their desired outcome through their interactions with your company, which means customer success spans the entire customer lifecycle, including the very earliest touch points with the customers, from your sales and marketing all the way through conversion and then onboarding and across the entire lifecycle.
Right.
So it's important to really understand those things. So I say go to 16ventures.com, consume everything that I put out there. Basically what I do is I work with companies and then I write about it. I just have to get that stuff out of my head.
Sure.
And then, if I take clarity calls every once in a while, which
cool.
if you really need some immediate help, that's the best way. In terms of consulting, I mean, I work with companies mostly on a strategic basis. We can get tactical, but I like to work with companies that have resources to be able to take action on what we come up with,
Sure.
rather than having to go out and find a team myself to help them.
Exactly.
But, 16ventures.com, or follow me on Twitter at Lincoln Murphy. And I think what I share so much stuff that hopefully some of it would be able to help you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to reiterate for anybody watching, I'm a devoted subscriber to Lincoln's emails. The guy's got so much valuable knowledge to share. It's really fun. And if I can ask you, Lincoln, all of us learn, I think, from reading one another's stuff. If you want to suggest some other people I should interview next, who would you give a shout out to?
Oh man.
2, 3 guys, girls.
Yeah, so I mean, Stelly from Closed, if you're talking about sales, gosh, now I'm drawing a blink on everybody.
Closed.io, okay. I'll speak to them.
Stelly is the man. But there's also, I mean, in terms of sales, I think there's a lot of guys that Heather from Salesfolk.
Yeah.
Is amazing in terms of sales, and she really focuses on cold email, but just the way everything that she says around conversion optimization, I think would apply.
Fantastic.
Yeah, man. Let me think.
That's great. That's great. I can follow up with Stelly and Heather. Thank you. Yeah, that's super.
Sorry, man.
No, that's super. Thank you so much, Lincoln. You've been really amazing. So thank you. And let's be in touch soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Sure thing. Take care.